So that is something I want you to consider, is that you can pick up books like this and they'll change your mindset. And this is about being in a learning mindset or a growth mindset. And if you can use the word yet, I can't do this yet. If you can encourage your kids to say, it's not that you can't do it, it's just that you can't do it yet. And so like my 9-year-old right now is really paralyzed in his head about driving a stick shift car, because he's been learning, he's been driving different vehicles out, in paddocks and things like that. And he's really worried. And so he's been watching me. I drive a stick shift car and he's like, well, Dad, how do you do that? But he's like, oh, I'm never going to do that. I'm going to get an automatic, So it's those things like is really to listen out for yourself and your self-talk, and particularly as we talk today about leadership. So let me know where you're watching from. Hey, Barbara, Espido, Salazar, welcome. Madeline, welcome. Madagleen, sorry, I apologize. Have we got an issue with the audio? Okay, we have audio on YouTube. Excellent. So we've got audio's fixed, and welcome to everybody. Adam, I can see you there on LinkedIn. Nick Fagan, Zach, welcome on LinkedIn. So if you've got questions in the comments there, hit those comments, and if you have got questions, that would be fantastic. That helps me give you some more value. There's 4 quick points I've got here on the whiteboard that I just want to talk about in this session. Really what we're framing up is a leadership and a management session today. And I really wanted to give you sort of 4 categories of things to be thinking about in that context: salesmanship or saleswomanship or sales ladyship, organizational understanding, reverse engineering, and pattern recognition, all predicated around at-bats or goes at the bat, if you like, or goes at the base. And that's a baseball terminology in terms of getting at-bats, getting opportunities. So what I thought would be really interesting is, as a leader, and you can talk about the different leadership styles. You can go Google that. You can talk about, dictatorial leadership. You can talk about social, empathetic leadership, all the different leadership styles. I don't want to talk about that because there's tons and tons of stuff on the internet. There's thousands of books about leadership styles. And it's really, it's difficult for you to say, well, I'm going to have a dictatorial leadership style and actually be in that zone every day. It is fairly fluid, and particularly at a time like now where we've got, lots of organizations that are still in their workplace, like this factory here that we're in, or organizations like Best Practice, where everybody is working from home. And so when we start to think about that, my leadership style with the Best Practice team has been very much one of a macro manager, in terms of saying, okay, what are your goals? What are your numbers? What's your dashboard? What are your objectives for the week? And then trying to influence people to thinking more broadly and bigger picture about their objectives. And I'm seeing some really great results from that. So it's been really standoffish. It's been really great for our business having everybody working from home, because people are figuring things out before they come to me, instead of coming to the door of my office and asking me questions. So it's been really empowering for a lot of people. Initially frustrating, but very good. So from a leadership perspective, any leadership position in an organization, the further up you get in an organization, you're going to be more customer facing. That is reality. So if you don't like a customer facing position, if you don't like customers, then I want to ask you right now to really think about whether you want to start moving up in an organization or leading an organization. Because, 2 things happen: is you become the escalation for lots of matters, but you're also, at all times, you are the brand of the organization. And so salesmanship, in my example, or sales leadership, is really important for 2 reasons. One is to get your team motivated and inspired to move along the strategic plan, if you like, for the organization, but also you're always going to be selling. So you're selling your ideas inside the organization, or you're selling your products and services outside the organization. Now, you're not going to be hard sell, here's my quote, sign the deal, pay me the money. You're also part of branding. 97% of the time, in fact, it's branding. And it's what I would call follow back. So in sales, we talk about follow up, follow through, follow back, and you're following back. It's the incubation, it's the branding, it's building the story, and it's building the goodwill, so that when that person might think about buying your product or service, they will think of you first. So it's about being constantly top of mind. So that is, for example, lots of social media like we do is, I'm not selling to you guys, I'm giving you lots of principles. So when you think that you might like to buy something, then you'll reach out to me and ask me who to buy it from, or buy something from us here at Best Practice, if and when maybe in the future, or you might refer us to somebody who you hear is interested in buying products or services around what best practice offers. So salesmanship is really, really important then as a leader. So what I've been observing recently is a lot of people bury their head in the sand and they say, I'm not a salesperson. I'm hopeless at sales. I'm shit at sales. I'm no good at selling. I don't want to be a salesperson. And Carol Dweck says, just add yet to the end of those sentences. I'm not a good salesperson yet. I'm not good at selling yet. I'm not very good at sales yet. And that's something that I want you to be considering. I'm not very good at influencing my team yet. I'm not a very good leader yet. And so that is part of this development. And you're here learning with me right now, and it is definitely something that you're already in that mindset. But I want you to just bring that to your top of your consciousness. That word yet is really important. So I can't do something, just make sure you're just talking yourself into saying yet. And if you want to check out that recent LinkedIn post that I put up a couple of hours ago, then we can go ahead and do that. So we've then got the next thing there is about organizational understanding. How do organizations work? How do we deal with people? How do we lead people? How do we work with people to get their outcomes? My approach to that really is to be saying really clearly what you want. And there's a good sentence, a good statement that I try to use more often, which is I want, and then, I want sales, or I want leads, or I want this project done, or I want this customer spoken to. So that I think the mistakes that I've made in the past is not being really clear about what my expectations are or my wants are. I said, these are my expectations. And, then people's minds start to drift as they're listening to what you're asking for. But if you can very clearly say, I want, first and foremost, it asks you to really think about what it is exactly that you want. And then the second thing is that the people will hear I want from you. And then in their service to you, or their work for you, or their support for you, or they're participating in your team, they will understand clearly because they've heard you say very clearly what you want. So as we start to say organizational understanding, it's also important to acknowledge the age of the team, the size of the team, the demographics of the team, the culture of the team, and start to think about organizations and how they're structured. They are groups of people. They act like teams. They have a vibe, and the leader sets the tone. And so I've got thousands of things to talk about from an organizational understanding perspective, but the first one would be that the leader sets the tone. And so it is very important to be managing your own self, if you like, doing appropriate exercise, getting to bed at the right time, not being overtired, not burning yourself out. Because if you bring negativity into the office, people will actually ask themselves, what have I done wrong? What's up? What have I done to upset him? And people will go into their own self-talk in their heads, and you will be completely blasé to that, or I have been in the past blasé to that. I'm having a shitty day from something else that's happened, a car crash on the way to the work. I can remember an example of where, I was booked on the way to work by a police officer for an unregistered vehicle. I didn't even know it was unregistered, so it was a shitty start to the day. I walked in and I was a bit flustered, and people were wondering what they'd done wrong. It's like, you haven't done anything wrong. I just had a bad start to the day. So it is important to understand how your organization is operating in your specific context. So stop, have a look, and ask yourself the question, how does my organization operate? Do I understand my organization? Do I understand my group of people? Do I understand their culture? And it's really starting to think about, while you might present yourself in a particular way for your customers, how do you need to present yourself for your team members? And I do see in some organizations a significant clash of even things like how people dress and how that affects the customer and the staff. You might be suits and ties and very professional facing the customer, but then your staff might be in a factory. And so it's managing that cultural, perspective, if you like, and they do that quite well here in this particular factory. And I think we do it quite well at Best Practice. Like, I don't wear a suit, I don't wear a tie, I don't wear a jacket most of the time, because I've got to find that delicate balance between my clients and obviously our people in our team. So it's all those parts to think about organizational understanding. So if you turn these into questions, what can I do to improve my salesmanship and my influence in my organization? So you can write that question down right now. What can I do to improve my organizational understanding? And the next one here is pattern recognition. And pattern recognition is really interesting, and that comes from, my love of graphs and charts and numbers and data, and starting to look at, are there patterns? Are there patterns in graphs? Are there patterns in the numbers? Are there cycles in the numbers? Can I see any patterns forming? And so I do find from time to time, although we can look very specifically at the spreadsheet and at the numbers, at the leads, at the metrics, at the followers, at the likes, independently look at social media posts and see likes or followers or comments. But over time, can I see an average? Can I see it increasing? So if I was to graph that, what would I see? If I was to graph my revenue, what would I see? If I was to graph my leads or your leads, what would I see? If I was to graph your cultural score, your cultural vitality survey in your business, what would I see? If I was to graph, your staff engagement, what would I see? And pattern recognition is really interesting. Can I see, on the graph, if you like, can I see the trend increasing? And so pattern recognition is really important, because then we can say, well, I think I see a pattern forming. What am I going to do about that? I can see a pattern forming. The trend is going up. What am I doing about that? Give it a bit more push. I can see that, something is trending down and it needs to go up. I can give it a bit more of a push. So what actions will you implement when you see patterns have occurred in the past? What will happen in the future? Now, if we talk just about the economy right now, global economy right now, we are not going to have a snapback. The economy on the graph has contracted, and say, for example, flights, the purchasing of flights globally, specifically some data from Australia that I saw yesterday, the purchase of flights is down 97%. Now, there is no graph that could show that as a pattern, but what I can tell you from flights being down by 97% is they will not bounce back that full amount. They won't come back to previous levels, because the people that buy flights don't have money. People have lost their jobs, so they're not going to buy flights for holidays. Businesses have moved to virtual working like this, so we're not going to be buying corporate flights. Like, our flight expenditure after this global crisis will probably be a quarter of what it used to be pre this crisis, because we've moved our business to a virtual model, and we won't be going back to previous levels, at least not for a significant amount of time. But the level that when we get back to previous levels, our business will be double. We'll be doing a lot more work. So proportionately, compared to our numbers, there will still be a lower expenditure on flights per dollar of revenue, if that makes sense. So I want you to think about, what does pattern recognition mean for you? And a good way to do that is to do a Google search, like my cup says, just Google it, is to do pattern recognition as a Google search, and then click the images result. And you will start seeing graphs, and you'll see people that have put up posts and content on the internet about what patterns look like from a graphs perspective. And I want you to start to learn that. So you will see patterns across all of the different graphs that you can create from numbers that you track and keep, and data you keep from your organization. Okay, that's on pattern recognition, which is down here. Let's talk about reverse engineering. Now, with pattern recognition and then reverse engineering, we can say, well, if we need a particular quantity of production or utilization from our people in the organization, then we can start using patterns and data to go back and say, well, what do the numbers need to be? And it becomes a fairly exact science in saying, for example, if I use leads and marketing and revenue for your organization, if you know that when you look back over the last 12 months, that for every 100, let's make the maths easy, for every 90 people that you talk to, you win 30 projects, you know that you need to speak to 90 people to win 30 projects. And that is reverse engineering. And so go and have 90 conversations. You may, you could hypothesize because you've got some data. You could hypothesize that if you spoke to 180 people, you would win 60 projects, because you doubled your number of conversations, you would double your number of projects. So that's something that I want you to consider in terms of reverse engineering, particularly now, as you're starting to look at your organizations coming out of the COVID crisis. How can you be more efficient? How can you be more effective? How can you do more with less resources? Reverse engineering is really important. So what more can you learn on the topic of reverse engineering would be my question for you. Now, Atbats is really interesting, and I might actually change that to reps. So let me know in the comments if you've ever done a push-up, because this is about reps. And what I'm talking about there is repetitions. The more times that you do something, the more repetitions, the more at-bats, the better you're going to get. And that's the more times that you do something. And this is about getting paralyzed, or the starting paralysis that people might get. I want it to be perfect. You know, it's a syndrome in terms of the perfectionist syndrome. You get better with practice. Perfect practice makes perfect, not sitting and hypothesizing and reading all the books and having discussions. That does not equal a result. You can only measure a result, and you can only measure a perfect result when you do it. And you can do it once, and then you can get better, and you can do it again, and you can get better, and you can analyze your performance. We were doing that with our marketing team this morning at 9 a.m. I was doing it with Luke, and I was saying, okay, well, that post, we looking at some TikTok videos that we did last week. If you're not following us on TikTok, go and check us out. So I'm Kobe Simmet on TikTok. I think that's it, is it? Or is it Best Practice? It's Best Practice Biz on TikTok. Go and find the TikTok account. And you can see what we're doing is we're analyzing and saying, okay, well, how did the post go? What did we do? Now that we're looking back a week later, what should we have done differently? And then we can go and make that change and do it differently. So that's about repetitions and at-bats. And it's really important to consider in terms of salesmanship, how can you get better? Well, do it more often. Organizational understanding and how looking at your organization, how it's operating, do it more often, look more often. Reverse engineering, do it more often. The more data that you've got from the more times that you do something, the better you're going to get at your reverse engineering. Pattern recognition, again, it's something that I want you to consider in terms of the numbers of times you do something gives you an opportunity to start looking for patterns. And when you're looking at graphs and when you're thinking about statistics and analyzing statistics, there are lots and lots of documented patterns that show up on graphs that are reoccurring, and it is fortuitous that these patterns show up and you go, oh my gosh, that's what just happened. And then you talk about the likelihood and the probability of it happening again. And if you see a pattern on a graph, it's very likely that it will happen again. And that's the thing that I want you guys to be considering with things like pattern recognition is we don't really do that very often, and we don't have conversations about it. If you want to get into the nuts and bolts of management systems and ISO standards, that talks about monitoring and measurement. And it talks about, so using the monitoring and measurement parts of a management system, you can obviously use pattern recognition, you can do reverse engineering, and you can get some data on organizational understanding. That's how we're meant to use these tools, but we sort of worry about it's documented, is it as a, you know, it's a policy, instead of actually leveraging the value out. Okay, so hey, Zach from Freshie. Hey, Adam. Hey, Stan on LinkedIn. Stan, you're on LinkedIn and YouTube. Hey, Teresa. Hey, let me know where everybody's watching from. Oh, wow, we got someone from Elk Rapids. Welcome, Cebu. Wow, fantastic. I hope I'm saying all these places again. So we got people from all over the world again. It's fantastic. Riverside. Hey, Richard, Riverside in California. Welcome this morning. Sorry, this afternoon. I think it's about lunchtime in California from memory, about the time zone. They're on the West Coast. So if you guys have got any questions, Indiana. Hey, Mark from Indiana. Thanks for watching and jumping on. Has anyone got any questions? So has this been helpful? Let me know in the comments if this has been helpful, yes or no. It's my lens in terms of what we can consider in terms of our leadership styles to give us some, you know, some depth to our leadership style. So yeah, we can put labels on leadership style, but as you get through each week and each day, you can say, okay, well, let me ask myself some questions. This is what I'm doing. How can I be better at influence? How can I get a better result? How can I say less and get a better result? How can I empower people and educate them to sort of take charge of what they're doing? Because that makes me scalable. I guess that's the question, right? Is why would I do that? So when I do something like improving my influence and my salesmanship, I can get a better result with less effort. So then when I put the same amount of effort in, I get a much greater result. And that's my goal. My goal is to grow our organization, to be able to help more companies globally with improvement, and to be helping you guys all around the world as we are. Hello from Atlanta. Hello, Myra in Atlanta. So I want you guys to just be thinking about how we can do these things, and that's my goal. So I can be more efficient. So working smarter, not harder, and having our team work smarter and not harder, so that it becomes a great place to work. And that is our goal for your organization, is to help you to have a fun organization to work at, because you're working smart, not hard, and you're starting to say, okay, well, here's what I can do to improve. Sorry, I'll just put this on silent. Okay, and obviously repetitions. You know, perfect practice makes perfect. One of my coaches said that to me about 10 years ago. Get out and do more practice. I feel guilty thinking about that particular sport right now because I've been doing much of it lately. But that is something to do, to say, okay, well, on the SWOT analysis on yourself, what can I do to get better? So I hope that helps. Hey, Ash. Welcome from Protec. You're welcome, Barbara. No problems at all. Okay, so any questions? Soldiers Point, Port Stephens. Hey, Helen. Wow, there's people from all over the place today. Absolutely fantastic. So tell me something, if you don't mind sharing, what would be the one or two biggest challenges that you guys have got in your organizations over the next month? So maybe if you'd like to share, and I can get into this. So I'm interested to know what would be, I'll just turn the screen around. What would be one or two, what's your biggest challenge that you might have in your organization over the next month? So Krishna, how do these relate to leadership? This is about giving leadership some depth. So I'm not going to stand here and give you the different categories of leadership. I'm giving you how to be a better leader, how to actually take a leadership position by being better at sales and influence. So selling externally, if you want to use that label, and internal sales is influence. How can you be better at sales and influence is going to help you to be a better leader, because what you're doing is you're leading people to the organizational goals. Organization has a set of goals, or you have a set of goals. And the better you are at selling your ideas and influencing people in your team, the more effective you will be in getting results for the organization. The more organizational understanding that you have, then you're going to be able to make smarter decisions to help your organization to get to its organization's goals. With reverse engineering and pattern recognition from data, by collecting data and collecting some insights and facts, you're going to be better at doing some analysis about where to make improvements and starting to set goals. And a good example on reverse engineering is, how many people do you need to employ to achieve a certain level of productivity, and how many sales do you need to have around a certain amount of revenue? And then you can reverse engineer that, and you can say, okay, well, if that's the result we need, and that's the effort that we took, if we want to double the organization, we can see the areas of the business, the other areas of the business where you need to double. And that's the concept of pattern recognition. And it's something that doesn't get talked about very often when we look at graphs and we look at performance, to actually start to say, actually, if we graph this, can we see any patterns emerging? It's an open question, and it's just a different way to look at the organization with the goal of achieving your goals, if that makes sense. And then obviously reverse engineering, and obviously practice. The more times you get to do it, the more the times that you get in and do that. So I hope that helps you, Krishna. Okay, getting management to understand that they drive ISO, not one person. Jim, that's a great question. That is always a challenge. In fact, it's probably the most common question on our YouTube channel. I'll come to you guys across on LinkedIn and your questions shortly. So with how do I get management to understand that ISO is driven by the whole business? I recently wrote a post and I've had this question that I went into some depth. Stop talking about ISO, Jim, would be my recommendation. What I'd like you to do from an ISO perspective, ISO 9001 is about customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction is happy customers. So perhaps ask top management this question, and if you want to take some notes, this is the question to ask. What processes would you like us to implement to ensure that we deliver our promises to our customer? No mention of ISO. So I'll say that again. And you say this to the top management. What processes would you like me to document and implement to ensure that this organization delivers our promises to our customer? I'll go around the organization. I'll go around, whether your products or services, I'll go around the organization, and I will be checking to ensure that there are processes in place and training in place and data collection in place and checks and balances in place to ensure that we are going to deliver, and I can guarantee that we will deliver on the promise we made to our customer. That is what an ISO quality system is about. Now, you can interchange that to safety, and you can say, what are our processes to ensure that we guarantee the safety of our people? What training do we need to do to guarantee the safety of our people? So sometimes it's easy for us to use the jargon, but if we deploy some empathy to top management and we say to top management, what are your goals for the organization? This is reverse engineering, in fact. if you say to top management, what are the goals for the organization? And they say, well, we've got to hit a revenue target or a profitability target. And you say, okay, what do we need to do to hit that revenue target? And they'll say, we need to sell $1 million worth of products or services. And you say, okay, so which customers do we need to speak to do that $1 million of revenue? And they'll say, oh, those are the customers. The marketing team have worked out they're the customers. Okay, and how many times do we need to speak to, or how many customers do we need to speak to, because we have a strike rate of 30%, for example, or 25% or 50% strike rate? How many customers do we need to speak to? What are the promises we're making to those customers? Okay, do we have a process, or do we have processes to ensure that the sales team make their promise and then the production or customer service team can actually deliver? And so then the question is, have we got processes in place to actually deliver those promises? What would you like me to focus on? And so when, I live by this saying, which is the solution lies in the mind with the problem. The solution lies in the mind with the problem. And so asking top management and saying, hey, what should I do about this, or what would you like me to implement, is going to take a different context. Does that make sense? Because I can guarantee if you just beat people with, you need to take ownership of ISO, they'll go, I don't give a shit about ISO. All I care about is revenue. And you're like, yeah, it's the same thing. So Jim, I hope that helps answer your question. That's exactly right. I agree. It's a better way of not involving one person, but involving the whole management team. And that's correct. And it talks about, top management involvement and management review. So just forget about ISO for a minute and just say, hey, don't even call it management review. Forget your fucking auditors for a minute. Apologize for my swearing. Don't worry about those guys right now, and don't worry about what they ask for. Just say to your management, say, look, I just want to have a quick meeting, 30 minutes maximum, quick discussion around the most important processes that we need to ensure we're implementing to ensure that we guarantee that we'll deliver on our promise to our customer in the COVID-19 crisis. We want to make sure we can continue our organization and make sure we can continue to give great value to our customers. Then that will be the thing to focus on. And I guarantee you'll get a result, because it'll be like, oh, this guy cares about our customers. He's forgotten about ISO. He's not worried about ISO right now. Okay, let me get to Richard's question. How often would you recommend a SWOT analysis for management issues? Once a week for agility? Look, it's about organizational understanding for your question there, Richard, in terms of doing a SWOT analysis, if you like. So that gives us a better organizational understanding. If you're going to do something like that weekly, don't overcook it. So you don't want to take too much of people's time. You want to say, in the next month, in thinking about the next month, what might be our strengths, what might be our weaknesses, what might be our opportunities, what might be our threats. A big threat for everybody right now is the continued decline of the global economy. It hasn't hit the bottom yet. The large corporates are still doing redundancies. Airbnb, which is a global brand, we all know it, they let go of 25% of their workforce last week. On Monday evening of this week, here in Australian time, I saw more redundancies from large corporates. And so the biggest threat to everybody right now from an organizational perspective is your customer, the person you deal with, may not be there in a month. And that is a threat to organizations in terms of who we're going to sell to. So it's important to be, I would say, the opportunity for everybody right now for a quality system. For those of you that listen, because we talk lots about ISO 9001 and quality systems, and we talk about organizational development improvement, the biggest opportunity for everybody right now is to make 2 or 3 more friends at your key accounts and ensure that your quality system is focused on that. Ensure that your team is focused on that. Ensure that everybody is focused on that in case your key accounts contract in size and the person you deal with leaves. Because when they leave, you haven't got a relationship with the next person. So that's the biggest opportunity for all of us right now. All of us. We're all employed. We're all doing work. All of us right now need to ensure that we go and make more friends with people at the key accounts that we're working with our organization. Okay, so, and that is your SWOT analysis, Richard. That's the context: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Weakness: we don't have enough friends at our key accounts. Barbara, overcoming everyone's hesitancy to getting more together when things open up is our issue. I think it's DC government. Yeah. Barbara, that's a good question. What's the word I'm looking for? I've got a mental blank. can't even think about it, but it's getting people, the concept is getting people to open up, which is vulnerable. There's the word I'm looking for. How do we get people to be more vulnerable? Look, I think, rather than asking people, rather than the goal be to get people to be more vulnerable and getting people to open up, I think that there's a good coaching term, which is a one-on-one thing. So having a super one-on-one strategy. A good way to have good organizational understanding is to go super one-on-one, super, not high touch, but super high contact, regular, like over communicating. So a good way to get people to open up is to over communicate, because you will get the little pieces bit by bit, rather than, you haven't spoken to somebody for 6 months and all of a sudden you say, right, I want to have a deep dive. Tell me how you are deep down. How are you right now? And they're going to go like, this guy never talks to me. Why is he all of a sudden showing some interest in me now? So over communicating and getting that cadence going now is important, and keeping it light. But the other good coaching question to ask is, what's on your mind? And then the second question is, and what else? And it's a good way to just say hey, what's on your mind? And they might not give you their deepest thing right now, but they might say, hey, this is on my mind right now. I'm anxious. Am I going to have a job? Let's contextualize it around the COVID-19 crisis and the economic crisis right now. A lot of organizations have already shrunk in size, some very early, some now, depending on the strength of the balance sheet of the organization. That's a good piece of learning for you guys with organizational understanding. What is a balance sheet and how does that help an organization? Particularly at a crisis like this, it's the balance sheet and it's the value on the balance sheet that carries an organization when it doesn't have revenue. So learning about balance sheets, all of you, this is all of you right now. It's important to be understanding what your parallel competencies are. So going and doing some Google searching and teaching yourself about a balance sheet and how balance sheet helps an organization survive a crisis. So that's going to help you with your organizational understanding. And then even Barbara, in your organization, there will be a balance sheet. And so in terms of asking people on how we can open up, then you can say, okay, well, hey, what's on your mind and what else? Melanie, I'll just get to your question and then I'll answer some from LinkedIn. Staggering change projects to support staff uptake and retention of new practices. Melanie, that is a big challenge and I agree with you. And it is that constant juggling. And I think that the more balls that you can juggle, the better in any organization from a leadership perspective, but then sequencing the outcomes. And that's also part of this reverse engineering as a principle. Okay, that might give you some, by thinking about reverse engineering, might give you some insights into what could be the timelines that could be staggered with those projects and change management to get the outcomes that you need. Like I can guarantee that they won't all be required, not needed, required to be finished at the same time, because they're not all sequential, if that makes sense. So with change management, then that might help you to prioritize what you focus on and how you get those outcomes. One tip on change management with people in organizations, the more that you can get your audience to teach back, the more effective your digestion of the information will be. That's from the learning pyramid. I've spoken about that before. So with any change management program, ensure there is a component of digestion of the information and ensure that that program of rollout or implementation has the key people that you need to change or do things teaching back. The more they teach back, the faster they'll learn. Okay. SP Ramesh, could you please expand your question there on YouTube? What's immediate response after COVID scenario and learning needs? If you could just expand on your question, then I can cover that. Richard, I agree, Richard. The lack of effectiveness of training is a big one. I'd encourage you to just have a look at the learning pyramid. Training is more effective when it's being delivered. And I will declare that a large part of what I do right now for you guys is me teaching you so that I can be better at it in my organization. And that's my guilty pleasure, is that I know that I'm happy to teach you guys, and don't get me wrong, but what I get out of this is that the more I teach this, the better I get, because there's a metaphorical mirror right up, and I want to make sure that I'm like walking the talk and doing the things that I say that I'm doing. And that happens. It's just the human condition. So Richard, please ensure that any of your training programs have a methodology of your audience and your attendees or the participants training back. Now, the old school way of doing that is a test, by testing someone and saying there's going to be a test at the end. It turns the brain on to go, oh, I better remember this because I need to answer questions. But I like to have our team, I say, look, in any catch-up, one-on-one catch-up, and I have some this afternoon with team members and key reports to me, I'll be like, teach me something. And they know what that's all about because they know I'm trying to get them to be more effective. And that works quite good. Okay. Okay, all good with YouTube right now. Let me have a look over there at LinkedIn. Okay, so the question was, what challenges have you got in the next month? There's a question there from Laurie. Offer quality services, always been entrepreneur and I'm my own boss. Can't be fired. I wear all the hats of companies. I agree. Yes, that's a challenge. So Laurie, a good strategy for you to consider is something that I did when I started, which was I said there's 7 days in the week. There's 7 parts to my business. So of the 7 days, do something strategic, like one hard thing to grow and improve. Marketing on a Monday, sales on a Tuesday, operations on a Wednesday, HR or human resources on a Thursday, finance on a Friday, productivity or intellectual property on a Saturday, and then maybe, something other strategic for the organization on a Sunday, so that for the 7 days of the week, I'm doing one thing to improve the organization that's not reactive, that's not part of the services every day of the week. And then as you start to grow the organization, you can start to hire into the place where you're hiring to cover a weakness, or you're bringing on someone who's got a strength that complements one of your weaknesses. So that's something to consider for you. And I agree, don't pretend you know something that you don't. And that is what I was saying before about the learning mindset, which is, I agree with you, Laurie, which is to say that, and sorry, for people on YouTube, I'm looking at the comments on the LinkedIn live feed. So is to consider that you can, by teaching and also by figuring out the philosophy, then you can teach it, you can think about it, you can be more confident that you know what you're doing, and you'll feel more confident to give it a go. It's okay to talk about something that you don't know about because you're allowed to think out loud. So you can say the disclaimer up front, and I do this a lot. Hey, I'm just thinking out loud right now. And you can sometimes talk therapy is going to help you. Okay. Okay, awesome. So I think that's all of the questions right now. Laurie, I appreciate your comments there on LinkedIn. So if nobody's got any more questions, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Hit that like button for me. It's always entertaining to hit the like button and see that, see those. So that's quite entertaining. Let me know if there's anything else you would like me to speak on specifically around what we can do to improve things and cover content for your organization. I have had someone reach out to me and talk about pricing. They want to understand pricing of products and pricing of services, and I will cover that off. So I have Vanessa, if you could do me a favor, if you're watching, Vanessa on LinkedIn and YouTube, could you please post the link to all the new templates? We've put up a bunch of free organizational templates. Some of you have already got them on bestpractice.biz/guides. So the bestpractice.biz website is getting a lot of work done. It's brand new. There's lots of updates. It's this here, bestpractice.biz/guides. There's a bunch of free templates. You don't need to put email addresses in or anything. We will be launching a leadership guide today. The bottleneck is me. I haven't finished writing what I need to write. We've recently published a hospitality cleaning guideline for hospitality establishments that are trying to reopen, restaurants, cafes, bars, pubs, etc. That's going to come up. So yes, Vanessa has just posted the links there in the comments to the Best Practice Guides page. Please get onto that page. Get free copies, all of the free copies there. You can click the button in the top right-hand side of the screen. You can download and edit your free copies. There's no friction. And more importantly, what I would appreciate from everybody here is if there's somebody that you thought about or somebody that you think needs to see this, I'd appreciate if you could copy the link and share the post with them or tag them in the post. So specifically on LinkedIn, anybody that you think needs to see this video or we get some benefit from this particular video, tag their name in the comments. And I'd appreciate also if you copy the link on the YouTube video and share it across. You can copy that link and email it as you can with any of the videos on the Best Practice YouTube channel. Okay, I have got no idea what I'm talking about tomorrow off the top of my mind. But we'll be live same time tomorrow, same place. And if you don't see me out there because it's COVID-19, you will definitely see me next time right here on Best Practice on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And if you've got specific questions, remember that you can always reach out to me with a direct message on LinkedIn. The best place to get me is a direct message on LinkedIn, and I can answer your questions there if you're not confident in posting a question in the comments. So I'll see you same time tomorrow, same place. Oh, there we go. Vanessa has just posted. Tomorrow is how to sell when you don't like selling. So for those of you guys out there who, I'm not a salesman yet, or I'm not a sales lady yet, I'm not a salesperson yet, I'm going to talk about how to sell when you don't like selling. I'm doing more of that training. I want to get better at it. I have been doing it for 20 years. Okay, sorry. Rahesh has come back. Learning needs after COVID recession, time to recover and survive long. Could you send me a direct message on LinkedIn so you can explain your question a little bit deeper? But my point to you, Ramesh, I apologize, I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, is to do a SWOT analysis on yourself. Set yourself a goal. What is it? What is the income level that you want to be reaching? Where would you like to be working? What job would you like to be doing? And starting to do the learning and development now. There is tons of free learning on YouTube, on LinkedIn, all over the internet. And you can do that all for free right now if you haven't got great income, and you can start working your way through getting yourself to that goal. And if you send me a direct message on LinkedIn, I can offer you some questions that are going to help you to map out that plan. And that is an open offer to everybody. If you're struggling right now and you would like 10 minutes of my time just to ask me a few questions and get some direction, then I'm absolutely more than happy to help. Laurie, thank you very much for joining us. Everybody else there on LinkedIn, Laurie, thank you for all of your comments there on from Kansas on LinkedIn. Hit that like button, smash that like button. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, hit that one already. If you're not following me on LinkedIn and you're watching on YouTube, make sure you capture me on LinkedIn. And more importantly, Instagram. We got a bunch of great stuff happening on my personal Instagram, Kobe Simmet, on my personal Instagram, and I will try to post more on my stories. Lots happening over the next couple of days as we get best practice fired back up again after this COVID crisis. As always, I appreciate your time and I appreciate everybody's comments. And I will see you next time right here on LinkedIn and on YouTube on Best Practice TV. Bye for now.